So I was going to ask, sir, so like we're going out to XCTC to kind of watch one of the units going through this summer. What would be your piece of advice for those units going into XCTC? Like, what are the things that, especially at that platoon level, people can do to set themselves up for success?
Be physically fit, and be very open to a good stream of constructive feedback, teaching, and coaching.
Welcome back to Leaders Recon. Today we have Colonel Moore, our boss, with us. We're going to talk a little bit about Green Tab Commanders Conference. Sir, welcome to the program.
Hey, thanks for having me out here at PEC. We're kind of on a little intermission from the Green Tab Commanders Conference, but it's been a great event, and we say Green Tab Commanders Conference, but it's really been one of the signature leader development events that we conduct in the Army Guard for brigade commanders, our division commanders, and some of the other Guard senior leaders. So it's been a very good so far. Inject mixture of senior leader briefings and active participation in a seminar format to where our leaders have time to take in a presentation and provide some really good critical thinking coming out of that on the backside of it. So it's been a really good event so far. A lot of good participation, a lot of very thoughtful questions. When you overlay that with what's going on in the context of current events, global current events, it's been very good. So a lot of the things that we've been talking about, the pivots in the Army, division-centric, large-scale combat operations, you name it. Some of the other topics that we've had to overlay, domains of cyber and space, to bring those in, and obviously bringing in the 4 stars for some senior leader perspective and guidance from the Chief Staff of the Army, CNGB, Force Com Commander, First Army Commanders here. General Gudo has been on the ground the whole time, and we've had great support by some retired general officers who've also came in to guide some of that seminar and small group dialogue and discussion with brigade commanders, division commanders, other general officers from the states, and their CSMs there. So we've had good, robust dialogue and participation. So really looking forward to kind of taking the feedback of that and continuing to evolve this event. And it really is a training event. I don't like to use the term conference, but we'll evolve that. Keep putting more teeth into it because every second of leader time is tremendously valuable. Whether you're a traditional guardsman and you've got to sacrifice your work week to come out here, that's huge. And on the full-time side, the same thing, just trying to stay connected.
And so if you had to summarize what is a Green Tab Commanders Conference, what would that be in short?
Signature senior leader development forum in the Army Guard. So it's a group of the best and brightest of command teams from all across the Army Guard, brigade combat teams, engineer brigades, you name it. And you overlay division commanders with that, division command teams. And then we'll bring in some adjutants generals for sort of the second layer of this to make sure that we've got everybody's altitude and airspeed adjusted to where we can really have those robust small group sessions. So it's a signature event. It's got a lot of certainly at the 3-star level, very immersive participation.
What are some of the highlights that came out of the conference this time?
Wow. So the highlights obviously is being able to come in and get into a smaller group with at the 3-star level. Obviously, Chief of Staff of the Army, being able to really talk directly to the group yesterday, and we stair-stepped it in with some pretty in-depth discussions on space and cyber. I came in with a pitch on training in a multi-domain, just training in MDO, and tried to tie those things together and be able to go to the brigade commanders and say, hey, this is what, you know, I'm doing for you as the synchronizer of the Guard training enterprise in terms of policy and resources. So my brief, definitely not the highlight of the show, but you know, this is about tying things together and providing a venue for that feedback, you know, from the commanders. Come in and we're able to turn that around, and it's really good.
So with everything happening like in Ukraine right now, obviously we're into like what, day 6, I think,
Right.
of the invasion. What is that, you know, how did, you know, some of those big world events really impact those smaller group discussions that are happening right now here?
So the truth is, everybody's watching it. Everybody's watching it unfold. I think that I used the term in the brief yesterday, the term unpack, I don't know, 6, 8, or 10 times when we were looking at unpacking, you know, training at echelon. We're really unpacking the events and watching them unfold on the global stage, and I think it's really it's really bringing some things home about the level of readiness that we need to maintain in the Army National Guard. That, you know, I said we've always got to start with 2 things, and that's individual readiness. Whether it's, you know, you're making sure that you've got the individual training that's appropriate for your grade, and then maybe some, and that you've got a high state of individual readiness, and then we bring that on and work it at the squad, crew, and lethal platoon level, you know, and you know, mission command proficient companies and battalion staffs that have a level of staff proficiency needed to synchronize that. So that's what's really hit home, is that level of readiness, fight tonight readiness. And as I've said before, for the last 2 years, the Army Guard, it's been like a warfighter. And we went to the warfighter and we've gotten injects that, you know, you can't make up. You can't make these things up. And sure enough, we have worked through those, and the success of that has been proficiency at the small unit level, and that we've been able to come together on short notice with limited guidance, you know, some clear commander's intent about what we're doing, regardless of the mission set, whether it's been, you know, COVID, Washington, D.C. response, or it's been a continued steady state of global employment overseas in some very, very dangerous places. You know, even with, you know, the Guard participation in recently in Afghanistan, coming out of that. So that's what it's been a very loud alarm bell about the importance of readiness in the Army Guard, and certainly as the you know, as a lead for Army Guard training, I take that very seriously every day. Is, you know, we're continually I'm looking for those resources to apply it to build readiness, and we're making sure that all that aligns against the, you know, the strategy and the policy, that we're building readiness in the right areas with limited resources.
So keeping that in mind, and that with the resource constrained environment that we are kind of operating in now, what does that look like moving forward, as far as, you know, that struggle between building readiness and, you know, maintaining
what this is all going to drive us to do? And we know that, you know, in the last years of persistent conflict, that our ability, you know, to effectively plan and implement solid training management has degraded. So we got to work on training management, and we've got to look a little deeper, and we've got to prioritize, and we've got to resource. And the better that we can deliberately do that, I think the more efficient we're going to become with limited resources. So that's we're working on a couple of tools right now in TR, primers to provide to at the company level to better understand how the whole training management process really all comes together.
Okay.
And then you slap that 7.0, and I just reread 7.0 for about the 3rd time on the plane coming out here. It's actually a really good manual, and it's very fundamentally focused, and that's just what I'm driving everybody to be proficient at the fundamentals, and all that lethality will follow.
So then how does that, you mentioned there's some new tools in TR that you're kind of working on developing. What are some of the priorities that you've had? You've been in TR here for a while now, and like how have we seen that impact now the states and,
Yeah. So the one thing that I probably wasn't very good at when I started this job, and I just hit 3 years as a division chief here in the Army Guard G357. I started out in readiness and plans, and now I'm in training. So I took the readiness over there. So when we talk about prioritization, obviously the most important thing that we have is time. So we have to carefully prioritize time. So to simply say that we're going to throw money at a problem and indiscriminately just put a lot of people on orders or whatever, that doesn't really work. So we have to prioritize what we're doing, and obviously we work it down from the top down. At the signature events are our CTC rotations, and those are the priority for Army Guard collective training. We work the CTC rotations to get the maximum amount of goodness, of leader development goodness out of that. And you just completed one of those, and it probably gave you about 6 years onto your career life there. You could, I probably should be interviewing you, but those are formative experiences that grow us all as leaders, and sometimes they're not a whole lot of fun. And it's obviously what we do, in contact in the box, but it's the getting there and getting back that also challenges everyone at every echelon, from across the warfighting functions. And that's really how we view the performance there as we get ready to conduct that. And then you walk that down, and we've also got the warfighters that build that staff proficiency. Army warfighters, total Army warfighters, and they're a big deal. And we spend a lot of time and resources and energy making sure that we've got the right units plugged into the warfighter exercises.
And sir, just to kind of add on that, not to interrupt you, but like, if you're up to say, like, what are the key components? Like, what's the selling point? Like, why is a warfighter so important for a brigade? What would that be?
A warfighter is huge for an individual or for a unit. Ever how you can get you or your unit involved in those exercises. It ensures interoperability with our regular Army counterparts, because it's total Army. So it's not just going to be the Guard, in an isolated event. It's a total Army warfighter. The latest doctrine, TTPs, are going to be inculcated obviously throughout. You're going to get world-class teaching, coaching, mentoring, guiding, all of that, and the latest systems. So you're really, that staff proficiency and those sets and reps are going to be there, and those sorts of things pay off, just as movement under live fire conditions at night. And I'll probably say that a couple more times here before we conclude this. But that's hugely important, is that level of staff proficiency in a warfighter in particular. And then we walk that down to our XCTC program when we talk about small unit movement, lethal platoons, as we have that event, and we have some other things laid on with that at echelon. But the focus is lethal platoons, mission command proficient companies in the XCTC program, and it's delivered at the point of need. So we're able to bring in a total training support wrap to a unit to conduct a warfighter. And I don't look at it purely through the lens of it being a precursor to a CTC. It really is, beyond getting you ready for the CTC, it gets you ready for life. It gets you ready for whatever the world will throw at us as soldiers, whether it be in full contact somewhere, or whether it be just getting your squad to move to a location with limited guidance at night, with a compressed orders process. So So the XCTC program does that, and does a really good job of shaping feedback for junior leaders, that they've got that in their hip pocket, and really allows us to see ourselves at the small unit level, because that's the first thing we have to do when we jump off into any of these bands of collective training. And then, you know, through the entirety of that, we're always going to school. We're always completing, you know, whether it be our MOS qualification, critical functional, or our PME. That's a continuum, and then balancing that with life is another extremely difficult, demanding conversation. But that's always there, because that's that foundational, the bedrock of unit readiness.
Well, and that's what I was going to ask, sir. So like we're going out to XCTC to kind of watch one of the units going through this summer. You know, what would be your like piece of advice for those units going into XCTC? Like, what are the things that, especially at that platoon level, people can do to set themselves up for success, so they're really getting the best, you know, leader development training out of that 30-day exercise?
You know, be physically fit, and be very open to a good stream of constructive feedback, teaching, and coaching. And set some goals. Set some goals about A, becoming a better soldier, but B, becoming a better squad and a more lethal platoon. Okay. And for the junior leaders, all the rheostats for XCTC, really, commanders are the trainers. So, and that's sort of, always been the case. But you've got to take ownership of the event, and you control the rheostats, and you can really tune in on the strengths and weaknesses of the small unit completing the exercise. And we can make those adjustments ever how the commander deems it necessary to place it against his or her training objectives. So it's all the rheostats are in the commander's box. So it's very leader focused, but there's something in it for everybody. And it's one of our signature collective training programs. We spend an enormous amount of time and energy and resources against it. So, exploit it for all it's worth.
Well, and then kind of pivoting a little bit, you hit on leader development as with the CCC rotations. What are we looking at over the next couple of years anyway, as far as CTC rotations available to the Guard? And then what would be your advice to some of those junior leaders about why it's important for them to be engaged with CTC rotation?
Yeah, you just said something real critical about the next couple of years. So if you're going to a CTC rotation 2 years from now, and everybody should know who's going, and we have a very deliberate planning and road to war process for that. Try to get in somebody else's and get you some experience before you go with your unit. Extremely helpful, extremely beneficial. It will make the unit you're going with better, and it will also, that experience you bringing back, whether you went as a participant or you go as a guest OCT, OPT4, or whatever, ever how you can get some participation in there. And we have multiple venues for that. That's sort of the first thing. And obviously, you want to be physically and mentally fit before you go into the collective crucible of combat. So it is a long-term, a longer-term process as you're kind of setting conditions with your life and your family that you've got a significant training event that you're going to be participating in, but it will make you better. And then as you move through the LTP processes, just take everything that you can grab, every bit of good TTP, and getting those platoon SOPs ironed out. Spend a lot of time. Obviously, you'll spend a lot of time getting your unit ready, but spend some time thinking about it as well. So that's sort of the advice there. Some of that is dated from long ago, but I think it's still pretty, holds pretty true. That it is a deliberate process that gets you there, and because you're going to get a lot thrown at you.
And we're trying to take some of the open source documents, sir, and put them onto the leader development website, just so that some of the units and soldiers can have some of those like planning
Yeah, and I think
products.
that's a great point. Everything that we're doing in TR, and I'm sort of putting this under the umbrella of a good community of practice, in terms of collective training, or if it's schools, or if it's just something that we went out and that we talked to units about in terms of training management, or it could be the H2F or the ACFT. It could be a litany of things. But that's out there, and our training centers, our maneuver combat training centers are the best in the world, hands down. And there's nothing that those Army organizations won't do for you or I to get us completely ready. So it's just like everything else in the Army. There's a read ahead. There's a read ahead for it. And it all starts at that small unit proficiency, understanding your weapon systems, understanding maintenance, and ruthless enforcement of cyclical maintenance on whatever vehicle, weapon system, or whatever that you've got, that you're responsible for. And I just take that to the next level, because everything is going to get exercised. In terms of that. So maintenance on yourself, maintenance on your systems and your vehicles, and the mission command proficiency, understanding those systems, and understanding how to communicate, and understanding that, in my day, it was really all about the white light. But in our world we're living in today, keying that microphone, keying that handset is equivalent to the white light. It is the signature that somebody's going to pick up on, and understanding that, and being able to go analog with your planning and processes, and dream on acetate a little bit. Hugely important to be able to do that, and write clear, simple mission orders in a very compressed amount of time.
Well, and how have you seen some of that? So obviously you see all these lessons learned coming out of the CTC, some of this stuff, and then we've all been seeing on the news like what's happening with the, like, I guess, information war, you could say, considered with the Ukraine Russian conflict, and the fact that I know exactly from my living room here that there's a Russian convoy, X number of vehicles in this part of on this route. How has that impacted your perspective, or what are some of the things that you've been thinking about related to that?
Yeah, I think about pretty simple things, but it takes you back to a time, if that you have a great amount of your comms that are going to be compromised, you learn different ways to communicate. So that's sort of the first thing, and you will communicate with much greater clarity, because we don't know when we're going to talk again, because we know that's going to be compromised. But the cyber the cyber business, and the technology is flipping faster than I can certainly keep up or talk about the TTPs on that, or really gain a great understanding of it. I just know that technology is spinning faster, and the enemy is turning that faster than we can imagine. So that's the thing that's interesting about it. Obviously, watching these things certainly changes your perspective. It's a pretty serious wake up call to everybody on the importance of the whole communications business.
Well, and you brought up something, sir, earlier about like self-development and reading and some things. Obviously, more at the strategic level now. What are you doing right now as far as like what are you reading?
Well, so I saw two things. So I'm reading a book called Contagious, and it's written by a professor up at Wharton, and it's really geared towards business, but it's titled Why Things Catch On, but it's taking an idea and being able to reach a mass of people with that idea or notion. So it's pretty good. We're working our way through that. And then I was coming in here today and I saw this kind of war, a classic book, and it's even better on tape, about the opening days of the Korean War. Okay. And it's absolutely eye-opening about what happened to our forces that were not prepared for the speed and velocity that occurred in the early days of the Korean War. The tempo, they weren't physically prepared for the crucible of combat. So you're already back on your heels. They hadn't conducted the collective training to understand that, okay, we're proficient in communicating now. Let's cut the communications off and see, are we still proficient at communicating without our systems? That and understanding, you know, the employment of weapon systems against, like I said, it's a great book about when you see the tempo and the level of unpreparedness, really, of the American Army in the early days of the Korean War.
Yeah, and for those listening in, we'll include, you can find these titles on the website. We've been putting all the, anytime a guest recommends something, we've been putting in like, hey, you know, Colonel Moore, right, this episode, like, you know, this title. So if they go to www.nationalguard.mil/leader development, we have a bunch of different, like, recommended reading from different subject matter.
Well, Josh, you
experts
can
like
just come in my office and you can take a picture of the books behind my desk, and most of them I've read. I haven't got all the way through the papers of Ulysses S. Grant,
oh, wow,
but who understood strategy and understood strategy when not a lot of other people in the Civil War really understood strategy. He understood it and was able to do some pretty impressive feats. That he understood strategy and he didn't quit. So two pretty remarkable characteristics. So I've spent some time reading about that, but I haven't completely got through those papers yet. So,
well, did you have any other final thoughts, sir, for today, just on leader development as a whole, or advice to the younger, at one time, Lieutenant Moore?
Wow. So the resources that we have out there now are exponentially greater than anything I ever thought of as a young company grade officer. So I really had to dig hard for the answers. Been doing a little bit of work, you know, on training in MDO. Really went back and looked in the early 90s when I was coming along with air-land battle, and how that looked. And MDO is not air-land battle. It has some of the, you know, significant components of it, but, you know, separate discussion there. But so I didn't have those resources, and the Army has some great resources now, digital resources. The 7.0 is a great manual, and then the manuals that are specific to platforms and weapon systems and all that. And you know, it's a given that you got to be smart on that as a leader. That's just a baseline. If you really want to get good at it, you got to take it to the next level and broaden your reading list a little bit to understand, you know, because an Army manual can get a little dry sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely, sir.
But there's some, if you look at what's going in academia and what's going on in, you know, and if you read the Harvard Business Review, things like that you kind of understand, you know, units and teams and cultures and the difference between culture and climate of a unit, a little bit, you know, deeper discussion, obviously, and it can get a little dense sometimes, and you have to sort all that out. But that's what I didn't have. So I would tell you, take those resources, and we'll make sure we get them out there. You know, here at the conference, I'm trying to get everything I can out of this into the hands of leaders so that they can go back and say, hey, this is what we talked about with cyber and space and those sorts of things, and real live issues about, you know, my goal in training is always, I want, you know, my contribution to the recruiting and retention enterprise is I want to provide or set the conditions for or provide the resources for, the policy for, the strategy for, the plan for high quality training that will attract and retain high quality soldiers. because at the end of the day, soldiers join the Army to train, and that's what you do. That's the nexus of everything. Those resources are out there. So I will always tell people to read, broaden your perspective. There's a lot going on in the news right now, but make sure you don't just get on one band or flavor of news. If you've got some satellite television, get on the BBC a little bit. Look at some of the other global news outlets and gain that perspective. And I think, and I red team everything, even when we're in Washington D.C. and we're talking about the building the program objective memorandum or the budget process. I try to take another view of it and go, well, if I were on the other side of the table, I would ask this question about what do you need that resource for? What readiness is this resource that the Army is providing you going to produce? And be prepared with those tough questions. And I would say that to junior leaders, those tough questions, that your soldiers ask you, you've got to have a response to. Why are we doing this training? What is the outcome of this going to be? What is this going to look like? And you have to be able to visualize, describe, and direct that a little bit as a leader. So that's what everybody's looking for. So those are just a few of the ideas on the top of my head about this. But we're just in an exponentially different place than we were than when a young Scottie Moore was out there, just trying to figure out how to keep my combat platforms, at the highest OR rate possible. And it was challenging, but I do think we're in a better delivery mode now. We can deliver most anything to your handheld device to provide you some better information context. And then whatever your questions are, what do you want to get better at? We certainly are, we put that out there to over the course of this week, to try to get our units, a more enriching experience, because I think that's important for us to attain and maintain a band of excellence in training. That'll really, I think in the Army Guard, we ought to have the best squads and platoons in the Army, hands down. And that's really, if I had one, before I go to sleep at night goal, that's what it would be, best small units, because at the end of the day, that's the difference. That's the killing and dying, difference on the battlefield is at the small unit level. And having commanders that understand the complexity of everything that they have available, and they're able to bring it together. And via mission command, small unit leaders are employed and capable of doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Thanks, sir, so much for coming and sharing some of your expertise here, both about the Green Tab Conference, some of your training priorities, and information for future leaders.
Thanks, Josh. I appreciate you having me. And I don't really have priorities. My senior leaders have priorities, but my job is to go in every day and try to make sure everybody's focused in the right direction. And sometimes I have to look in the mirror and make sure that I'm focused in the right direction. So I appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks, sir. Thanks for tuning in today. If you would like more information on any of the topics we discussed, please visit our social media pages in the links below. And please don't forget to leave us a 5-star review. You can find us wherever you listen to your favorite podcast.